4 tellings of the gospel. There's really only one gospel, but all 4 evangelists wrote their gospels to answer this one question: who is Jesus? And Luke's going to tell us about how Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And we're going to circle back to the Christmas story, but we're going to pick the story up for a moment in Luke 3 at Jesus' baptism. When all the people were being baptized, Jesus was baptized too. And as he was praying, heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended on him in bodily form like a dove. And a voice came from heaven: "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." So we hear that Jesus is God's Son, spoken by his Father as the Holy Spirit descends. And Luke immediately continues, "Now Jesus himself was about 30 years old when he began his ministry. He was the son, so it was thought, of Joseph." And then gives the genealogy back to the son of David, the son of Abraham, the son of Adam, the Son of God. Luke is emphasizing that Jesus is both God and man directly after his baptism by telling us he is the one with the genealogy that leads back to King David, then all the way back to Abraham, all the way back to Adam, who ultimately was created by God. And Luke is telling us here at the start of his gospel what is eventually revealed in the middle to the disciples. They say Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And then at Jesus' trial, Jesus publicly on the record says that he is the Christ, the Son of God. And it's interesting that Luke mentions the detail that Jesus was about 30, because 30 is the time when prophets, priests, and kings began their ministry. You can go back a slide for just a moment. We'll sit here until the end of this page. Sorry, I don't have anything else to add to this one yet. So he's starting his ministry at the same time as prophets, priests, and kings did. And then Luke gives us this genealogy so that Luke is saying that Jesus, this isn't just someone else's family tree. This is the family tree of the King of Israel, who has had promises of the coming Messiah made to David, to Abraham, and to Adam that he would come. And he's also the Son of God. And Luke tells us that he's the Son of God in 2 ways. Directly, by being conceived in the story that we're going to start reading next week. And if you trace it all the way back around, Jesus is also descended from Adam, who was created by God. That's interesting how Luke does that. Now, Matthew and Luke include Jesus' detailed genealogy, but John and Mark only tell us that Jesus is the son of David at the start of theirs. They also mention that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And actually, Mark 1, Luke 1, and John 1 all call Jesus God's Son, right in that first chapter. Matthew actually takes until chapter 4 before he tells us that Jesus is God's Son. But all of them agree that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, the coming king in the line of David, the one who is God and man. And in the Christmas story in Luke, we hear right in the narrative why Jesus' genealogy on probably both Mary's side of the family and Joseph's side of the family, why did they have a copy of that laying around? The reason is that Jesus was born on a road trip to a census where their family genealogies were available to them. This would be like if your birth certificate was issued on the day when they were issuing full genealogies back to the creation of the world along with it. And it looks like he got 2 copies with it. We'll talk about why. Luke knows Matthew has written, and we're going to talk about the interesting differences between these 2 genealogies that he has. Now, first of all, do you remember that when Mary was told that Jesus was going to be born. He was going to be reign on the throne of his father David. And Mary says, but there's no father involved. Do you notice that Mary didn't object? He can't be the son of David if he's only born through me. What's Mary telling us about herself? Mary's a descendant of David. Yeah. So Mary is a descendant of David, and Joseph is a descendant of David. And then I had this question. Aren't Elizabeth and Zechariah from the tribe of Levi? And I looked it up, and sure enough, they are. And Elizabeth is Mary's close relative, probably meaning cousin. So how can she be cousins to a Levite? You're not required to marry within your tribe in the Old Testament unless there's no male heirs in your generation and you have to keep the land within your tribe. So there's examples in the Old Testament of the king's family marrying into the priest's family. There's nothing that would have prevented that. You can be cousins with someone from another tribe quite easily. Now, there's some interesting situations that you have to deal with in any genealogy, but especially in a genealogy that is establishing who the king is. Okay, so think about this for just a minute. Think back in your list of presidents of the United States and go back to presidents of the United States in the 1860s during the U.S. Civil War. Who was the president of the South during the Civil War? Abraham Lincoln. Do you see how there's two answers there? We've got to have when there's a conflict, you can have a conflict for who is on the throne. You find that back in British history also, the monarchs. Who's the king of England when the king has been deposed to another country? He's in hiding because the other party, the interregnum, it's called, the time between kings. Who's the king of England? How do you record that on a list? South American countries have this problem. Bolivia has a band that the presidents wear. As long as they were elected president, they still count you as president if you came in through a military coup, but your official picture, the painting, won't have this cloth draped over you. So they have a way of differentiating on their pictures: elected, elected, not elected, elected, not elected. See that? So they still have to keep a record of presidents, even though they're admitting some of them weren't elected to get into that position. Likewise, if you look up a list of the popes of the Roman Catholic Church, there's times when there was 3 popes at the same time, and some of them excommunicated each other, some of them weren't in Rome, and they have this list of popes that don't count as popes, that are kind of on the list, but they have a footnote that says, we don't really count them as a pope anymore. So you see that on lists of genealogies of kings, you have these anomalies that you have to be able to handle how you're going to count them in order to show the record of who is king of your country. Now, in Jesus' genealogy, we find some interesting anomalies you can watch for. How would you handle these anomalies? They're actually in Matthew's genealogy, especially in King David's line. Before King David and around King David, you have all of these situations. How do you record an adoption? A second marriage? Generations with no male heirs? Scandals with unmarried parents? Disinherited sons? Skipped generations, and differently translated names. Those all are there in his genealogy. And the Jews had to handle all of these unique situations in the coming Messiah's genealogy even before Jesus came. Okay, so we're looking at these genealogies after they lead to Jesus. They were looking at these genealogies just going, where's the Messiah going to come from? And they're keeping track of which family he's going to come from. Now, Luke has to deal with 2 additional situations that don't come up on most genealogies. They are, how do you record a virgin birth on a family tree? And then, for good measure, Luke throws in one more. How do you record someone who's created directly by God and doesn't have any parents on a family tree? Luke said, very carefully, that's right, that's how you do it. Adam is the son of God. You see these problems on the unique situations that have to be handled on a genealogy. Now, when you look at Matthew and Luke's genealogies, the first thing that you're going to notice when you put them side by side is there are differences. We're going to talk about these differences. The first issue is the direction. If you're drawing a family tree, you have to choose whether you're going to start with you and work your way backward to your ancestors, Or are you going to pick an ancestor and work your way down to you? And Luke starts and works his way up. Matthew starts at Abraham and works his way down. The next thing you're going to notice is the length. If you compare these two lists, Matthew gives us 42 generations from Abraham to Jesus. Luke gives us 42 generations from David to Jesus in a much shorter section. And Luke gives us 77 generations in all. Do you think both of them were intentionally giving us sets of sevens? 42 is divisible by 7, and 77 is divisible by 7. We're going to talk about how to resolve these issues here. But there's also different lines that are traced. And we're going to see that this family line looks like it reconnects in two places. And the issue is, every time there's a discrepancy between Matthew and Luke, there was a question of who should be the next king in Israel. Remember what we talked about in those different places where you're tracing a monarchy's line? The places that are different between Matthew and Luke are the places where there is a succession controversy over who will be king next. Okay? Now, I think that John Calvin's recommendation of starting any discussion of a tricky part of a genealogy should always be started by reading Titus 3:9, which says, "Avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and arguments and quarrels about the law, because these are unprofitable and useless." Okay, we're going to get limited value out of arguing about this genealogy here. It's okay if we don't come up with the same solution to all of these thorny issues in the genealogies. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert, and then we'll read this. Here's my biggest takeaway that I learned in studying this. These two genealogies in Luke and Matthew were produced before Jesus was born. This is how the Jews were already saying, when the Messiah comes, it's either going to come through this line or this line. And then Joseph and Mary go to a census and are handed those two copies. And we'll talk about why. Here is Luke's, and I have scrambled the order. If you're following along in the sermon, I kept them in Bible order and put 4, 3, 2, 1, because Luke is working from Jesus up. And I put Matthew in 2, 3, 4 order. On the slides, I'm matching them, but they're still flipped on each list. If you can follow along with this, you can follow along with anything. It'll be great. Luke's genealogy says, "Now Jesus himself was about 30 years old when he began his ministry. He was the son, so it was thought, of Joseph, the son of Heli, the son of Mattat, the son of Levi, the son of Melchi, the son of Janai, the son of Joseph, the son of Matthias, the son of Amos, the son of Nahum, the son of Esli, the son of Nagai, the son of Maath, the son of Mattathias, the son of Simeon, the son of Joshech, the son of Joda, the son of Jonan, the son of Risa, the son of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the son of Neri." And now you don't need a baby name book. You've got all the options you'll ever need. We don't know anyone's story on that list except for Zerubbabel and Shealtiel, who are the ones directly after the exile. And Luke gives us 23 generations to cover that period of time, and Matthew only gives us 14. So it's possible one side of the family was having kids much younger than the other side of the family. The next section of the list is the king's family in Matthew. We know everybody on the list in Matthew, but in list number 3 in Luke, we don't know any of these guys until we get back to Nathan, the son of David. So they are the son of Melchi, the son of Adi, the son of Kosam, the son of Elmadam, the son of the son of Joshua, the son of Eleazar, the son of Joram, the son of Mattat, the son of Levi, the son of Simeon, the son of Judah, the son of Joseph, the son of Jonam, the son of Eliakim, the son of Melech, the son of Menna, the son of Mattathiah, the son of Nathan, the son of David. And if you have any of those names and I mispronounced it, I apologize. Okay? That's the list from the exile back to David, and you noticed he's tracing it through David's son Nathan, who is not the king. David is the first king on that list. In Matthew's, it's all the kings. Then we get to list number 2. Now, these names in Luke's list are all known to us, and there's no discrepancy between Matthew and Luke's now. The son of Jesse, the son of Obed, the son of Boaz, the son of Salmon, the son of Nahshon, the son of Amminadab, the son of Ram, the son of Hezron, the son of Perez, the son of Judah, the son of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham. That's the list from Abraham back to David. We could review those Bible stories, but so far, that's really where the Bible stories start in Luke's list. Matthew, you could just review all the Bible stories in the Old Testament by just having Matthew's genealogy in front of you. And then Luke continues back behind Abraham to the son of Terah, the son of Nahor, the son of Serug, the son of Reu, the son of Peleg, the son of Eber, the son of Shelah, the son of Canaan, the son of Arphaxad, the son of Shem, the son of Noah, the son of Lamech, the son of Methuselah, the son of Enoch, the son of Jared, the son of Mahalalel, the son of Kenan, the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. Do you know the proper way to make an argument from silence? Sometimes when people use the phrase an argument from silence, they mean you're arguing something that isn't there. But in a Sherlock Holmes story, there's a famous incident of a dog that wasn't barking. And Sherlock Holmes noticed the absence of the dog barking as evidence that the person entering the scene of the crime must have been known to the dog. So he argued from the silence of the dog not barking. And in Jesus' genealogy, the dog that's not barking is the fact that neither the Jews in Jesus' generation nor early Christians, when looking at these two different genealogies, we don't have records of people saying, you can't have two separate genealogies. Let me say that again. The original readers, neither the Jewish readers, who Luke and Matthew are arguing Jesus is the Messiah, nor early Christians, when they looked at these two different genealogies, they could read these two. When they looked at them, they didn't see a problem with having two separate genealogies. What does that mean that they weren't bothered by this? Do you see that? That's an interesting silence. Okay? Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which have been found, give us a little peek into what Jews were thinking before Jesus came. And you know what? There's discussions of how the Messiah's genealogy has gotten complicated, and there are some things where we're not sure which family line he's going to come through because of how history has worked. And Matthew and Luke provide solutions to these trickiest parts in the Messiah's genealogy. We're going to go back through this in just a minute. Big picture, the way that Christians have resolved the differences between Matthew and Luke's genealogies, you kind of have four main options. The one I've always heard is Matthew is Joseph's line, and Luke is Mary's line. And this is the one that John Calvin argued for. And the only change you have to make is that Mary's father counts as Joseph's father in this list. And there's a strong argument that Mary's father, who is traditionally Jehoiakim, could be Eliakim, which is Eli or Heli, and so the list in Mary's line looks like it starts with Mary's dad, not Joseph's dad. So in both genealogies, you've got this odd note where you're asking, Jesus is not the son of Joseph, and the genealogy, whose is it? Is it Mary's or Joseph's? You can kind of ask that. So the obvious other way of interpreting this is to flip the two and say that it's possible also that Matthew could be Mary's genealogy and Luke could be Joseph's genealogy. And that only works if Mary's father was also named Joseph. Okay, that's how that one would work. That's a minority position. Then, the other way of explaining this is that Matthew is Joseph's dynastic line. This is like the tracing of who should be king, and Luke is Joseph's physical line. And this is actually the earlier position that St. Augustine defended, saying they're both Joseph's genealogies, but that Joseph's parents had one of these weddings where someone died without a kid, and then they're married together to join the two lines, and that both of these messianic lines that resolve all the issues happened in Joseph's parents' generation, so that Joseph, in this census in Bethlehem, is handed a copy that says, oh, it looks like you're supposed to be king. Next, please. Right? He's not king right now. How'd you like to get that message? You should have been king. Here you go. Here's the two genealogies that show you should have been king. Next in line to pay taxes. Move along. Okay? It's possible that that's how it worked. And then Matthew could also be Joseph's simplified line written in Hebrew. And Luke could be Joseph's complete line written in Greek. There's an argument that you can make those multiple generations match up at several spots. And the thing that makes this complicated is that names sometimes aren't just translated. Do you guys remember when we hung out with the Koreans this summer? And you asked people what their Korean name was, and they would say Sue, and you'd say, and what's your American name? And they would say Sarah. And you're like, you didn't go with Sue? I mean, there's an American name that matches. Or you meet someone whose English name is Sarah, and you ask, what's your Korean name? And they tell you, and you say, oh, so is that Sarah, married to Abraham in the Bible? No. So that they picked a name that matches, or someone picked a name for them that doesn't match. And it's possible that these lists are like that, and that you also have lots of deaths of people who didn't have kids. They're the same genealogy, but that we can't see that because Luke is writing down everyone who died without kids and is writing their names in a different language. That's another way to handle that section of the genealogy. Do you see that there's different ways, and we don't know which one of these is true for sure? What we do know is that this didn't bother the people in Jesus' generation. Isn't that interesting? There must have been a solution that we're not sure which one it is that they understood that we don't. Okay? Let's go back through this really quick. So the biggest differences are between Zerubbabel and Joseph, right down to a different father for Joseph, whether it's Heli or Jacob. And this could, again, reflect Joseph and Mary's family trees. Now, they go back up to Zerubbabel and Shealtiel. You see that he's at the bottom of Luke's list, and he's at the top of Matthew's list. That's the generation that came back from the exile. And this is a spot where things get complicated. We have different fathers and different sons of Zerubbabel and Shealtiel in the Old Testament. Sometimes Zerubbabel is called the son of Shealtiel. Sometimes he's called the son of, I'm not going to get his name right. It starts with a P. It was his brother, his uncle. So it's possible that his dad, the one who's counted, one of those two brothers died without kids and had the son, and they count it in the genealogy for the other brother. But that's one of the spots where it gets complicated, and you see that's one of the spots where it branches. And it's possible that they're saying, we don't know how to handle this, but these are the two genealogies that merged at that spot, and they put them together there. Likewise, it goes back up from Shealtiel back to Nathan instead of Solomon. Let me highlight one more thing from Matthew's list. Matthew skips 3 generations at the time of the exile. He also skips he skips 1 generation and 3 kings at the time of the exile. And then he skips 3 generations at the time of Queen Athaliah. Do you know the story of Joash? The queen took over and killed off the king's whole family, and then they secretly hid one of them and brought him back. And there was an argument in Jewish circles whether that was a direct descendant of Solomon that got hidden and brought back, or whether that was actually a descendant of Nathan that got hidden and brought back. And so they had a question, is he coming from Solomon's line or Nathan's line? And that's one of the spots that Matthew skips some lines from the Old Testament, and it's the other spot where Luke comes back together. Do you see that the anomalies between the two lists meet in these places? And so the Jews were saying, we don't know whether the Messiah will come from Solomon or from Nathan. And Luke's genealogy traces him from Solomon, and Matthew's genealogy traces him from Nathan. At the time of the exile, God said Jeconiah's sons won't be king anymore. Record him as though childless. And Matthew skips that generation. But Jeremiah, in the very next verse of the first chapter, says, but David's line will return. So you've got this question. Does that mean he's going to come back through that line or through a different line? And again, the Jews were already aware of this and tracing it both ways. Okay? I think this, again, has been the biggest eye-opener for me, is that these issues probably were already identified as the two possible solutions for how the Messiah could have come. And they're both given to either Joseph and Mary or both to Joseph, handed to Jesus at the time of his birth, showing that he's the king no matter how you trace it. That is what is being claimed by Matthew and Luke. And then only Luke traces the section all the way back to Adam. But he doesn't just trace it to Adam, he traces it back to God, which means after telling us that Jesus is the Christ, the king coming in the line of David two ways, he now tells us that Jesus is God's son two ways. In fact, he says it three ways. The angel tells Mary, you're going to have a son. She says, what? I'm not married. There's not going to be a father. And the angel says, don't worry. God will be his father. Jesus is God's son that way. Then at Jesus' baptism, God the Father says, he's my son. And then Luke gives us the genealogy all the way back to Adam, saying Jesus is also the genealogical son, not just of Adam, but of God. He's trying to tell us these two things about Jesus. He is the Christ in the line of David, and he is God's son. Those are the two pieces that Luke is telling us about who Jesus is. Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, with the same complicated genealogy as all the kings of Israel had. He's the son of David, and tracing Jesus' genealogy to David two ways shows that Jesus is the rightful Christ and king. That's who he is. And Jesus is actually adopted by Joseph. Joseph is not only the stepfather of Jesus, he's the adopted father of Jesus. Do you know what another word for adopted father is? Father. It's not just pretending. He accepted him as his son. He gave him his genealogy. And I told this story right here in this same building many years ago in a Sunday school class. And I had an objection. I said, my sister was adopted into our family, and my grandparents are her grandparents. They are. She's adopted. She's a real member of our family. We're not pretending. She is my sister. And the objection, a Korean exchange student who you all know and love, raised his hand and said, that wouldn't work. What if she was Asian? And I said, not only is my sister Asian, she's from South Korea, just like you are. And all of her grandparents are Scandinavian. Because Joseph wasn't only pretending to be Jesus' father, he adopted Jesus as his son. Jesus was the son of Joseph while he was on earth. All of that genealogy led to Mary and to Joseph, and Jesus is God's son, the rightful king of Israel, the Christ, the one who will still reign, the one who is reigning now like David did even before he became king. From the time David was anointed, he was the rightful king of Israel even before he was reigning. And Jesus is the Christ, the anointed king, who is the rightful king even before he's reigning over somewhere. He's God's anointed one over all creation, Israel and the whole world everywhere. Jesus is the Christ. But Jesus is not only the son of David, he's also the son of God. And by tracing Jesus' genealogy back to God as God's son two ways, Luke is telling us that Jesus really is God the Son. Jesus is God and man. And as such, He's able to take these two genealogies that have been estranged, God and us. And in Jesus, we can be brought back together as children of God. See, this is what Luke is arguing. Remember, he's including this as part of the baptism story. The Jesus genealogy comes up at Jesus' baptism. Jesus is there to take their sin, to be treated as a sinner for them as the Son of God, to become a sinner, to become sin for us, so that we can be adopted into his family. We can be given his righteousness, and we can be made a part of God's family, not for pretend, but for real by adoption. In Jesus, all your sin is forgiven. More than that, all of the sins of your forefathers are forgiven, all the way back to Adam. Jesus took it all. And he has forgiven your sin, and he's made you a part of God's family for real.